Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman and Company here on the 440 Sports Network. Boy, it's good to be here. And today it's kind of sweater weather. It's kind of cool outside. It's very autumny. And one thing that I do feel like has become the norm as far as the autumn is concerned is that we're less talking about the Tennessee Titans and the games and the football and the upcoming game and the play in between the lines. And we're more often than not talking about the bullshit. And that's exactly where we're going to start today. It's on the bullshit. Now, let me just say, first and foremost, thank you for subscribing to the show. We are well over 2,000 subscribers now, so keep on subscribing and tell your friends. And again, keep downloading the podcast and liking the podcasts and everything else wherever you get your podcasts. And I want to keep saying that. And there's a certain number that we are approaching as far as subscribers are concerned that I am very much keeping an eye on. So again, tell everybody, tell your friends, if this was your favorite show, if this was your grandpa's favorite show on the radio, show him how to watch it or download it or whatever. So let's start on the big story of the day. Jarvis Brownlee Jr. is a JETS, jet. That's right. And we reacted on the show in live time when we found out to see something that was, I think we can all say, kind of shocking. Jarvis Brownlee Jr. traded for a bag of peanuts. I said this last week that I'm all for a fire sale and getting as many assets as humanly possible for this abomination of a football team. But when I talk fire sale and when you talk fire sale, I assume that we're talking about assets that have the most value in the immediate future with little to no long-term value for the team or the franchise. For instance, just using this as an example, Arden Key. Let's use Arden Key as the example. Because when it comes to Arden Key is a so-so player. But he has an expiring contract, and this team isn't going to be any good this year. So there may be a team that just needs an edge rusher. Like the way that in 2020, when Vic Beasley and Jadeveon Clowney failed, you needed an edge rusher. Just a warm body. And a team saying, you know what, we just think we need this guy, so let's deal a 2027 fifth to get Arden Key. Fine. Makes sense to me. That's a trade that I'm in agreement with. I'd sign off on. But when you take a starting corner, albeit not a very good starting corner, a guy who I'd rather have be a backup corner because I'd rather have better corners on my team. But when you take a starting corner who is on a rookie contract with 3 more years, including this one, of contractual control, and you trade him away for less than a pudding cup, there has to be some sort of an explanation. And that is what I was able to get. So we're going to call this a Stillman scoop. My understanding of the situation is this. Jarvis Brownlee Jr. lacked discipline, both on the field, as we know with all the penalties, and apparently off the field. And not only did they think he lacked discipline, the Titans got the sense that he lacked the professionalism to ever overcome that lack of discipline. Again, they had been telling Jarvis Brownlee about the penalties. Here's what you need to work on. And they got the sense that he was not professional enough to listen to the coaching and change. I heard that Jarvis Brownlee Jr. would show up late to meetings, and he wasn't willing to change. And the team figured that as they're trying to build a culture, you can't win with Jarvis Brownlee's mentality, with Jarvis Brownlee's lack of professionalism, with Jarvis Brownlee's sense of entitlement. He didn't feel like he needed to show up to meetings. They didn't feel like he was disciplined enough to learn how to stop committing penalties on the field. So they moved on. This kind of reminds me and seems somewhat familiar, if you remember a couple years back, to the Rishard Matthews situation that Mike Vrabel had to go through. If you remember, Rishard Matthews was a starting receiver for a couple of years. Wasn't a very good receiver, but he was better than bums. Got injured, came back, wanted his starting spot promised to him, was upset that the team didn't promise his starting spot to him, and he didn't like it. And Mike Vrabel and John Robinson were trying to tell him, like, dude, if you're healthy, you'll get your spot back by earning it because you're good enough, so you'll get your spot back. And this is really nothing, but Matthews wasn't having it, and he just quit. And so they decided, okay, fine, we just can't do it. We got to go into a different direction. And that's what these Tennessee Titans decided they had to do with Jarvis Brownlee. They thought he was too undisciplined and too unprofessional, wouldn't show up to meetings on time, disrespectful in that sense of the coaching staff, that they felt like he's not going to change. It's just time for us. Let's just go ahead and move on. And if that's the case, then on the surface, in the context of this one move, which was a get this guy out of here. Again, the return for Jarvis Brownlee wasn't anything that would make sense. Guy's not buying into the coaching. Guy's not showing up to the meetings on time. Guy is not wanting to be a part of the program. You're trying to rebuild. You can't have guys that act like that. But here's my question for the Titans in kind of this particular context. And this question is for everybody whose name is not Mike Borgonzi. Because everybody who isn't Mike Borgonzi was here last year. Did you not see the lack of professionalism last year? Brian Callahan was the head coach last year. Denard Wilson was the defensive coordinator last year. Chad Brinker was the president of football operations last year. So I'm trying to understand something here. How is this now just an issue with Jarvis Brownlee Jr.? So you draft a kid out of college. He has a bad attitude. At least that's what they seem to believe now. Unprofessional, lacking discipline. Again, we'd circle that and say, yeah, bad guy. Which it's more nuanced than that, I get, but just we're being simplistic here. He plays a role on the team last season. You fire the GM who supposedly drafted him. So if there's anybody who's got skin in the game on Jarvis Brownlee Jr., it's Ran Carthon, and he's gone. And yet you build your entire 2025 defense with him as a starter in mind. Again, think about that. Remember, they cut Chidobe Awuzie. Chidobe Awuzie was under contract. I believe it was for $12 million. They owed him $7 million. He was guaranteed $5 million, and they cut him to save the $7 million. And I know Awuzie was hurt last year, but Awuzie is a starting corner, and they cut him. And the other corner outside is L'Jarius Sneed, and there's no way when they were planning their 2025 defense that they were counting on L'Jarius Sneed. No way, no how. So there is no doubt, based on the way you built your team, that you were counting on Jarvis Brownlee Jr. going into this season. Again, I never considered Jarvis Brownlee Jr. a starting corner on a good team. Now, I don't value the cornerback position as much as everybody else does, because I just think if you have a good pass rush, you'll have good corners, and you can have average corners. And if you've got a great pass rush, you can win with Jarvis Brownlee Jr. at corner if you've got Houston's pass rushers. So I don't get too caught up into it, but at the same time, you have to have starting cornerbacks. And they circled Jarvis Brownlee as a starting corner. So, again, the guys who drafted him, Chad Brinker's still here. Brian Callahan's still here. Denard Wilson is still here. And they didn't see these problems that apparently were so big that this team had to get rid of Jarvis Brownlee Jr. They didn't see this coming. So now we're 3 weeks into the season. Brownlee has played in 2 games. And they're ready to give up the guy for what is essentially a bag of peanuts at the concession stand because he's got a bad attitude. And I'm not poo-pooing the lack of discipline or doubting the unprofessionalism. Again, I talked to people in the know, and what I was told was lack of discipline, showing up late to meetings, lack of respect, lack of professionalism, which would make sense. But wouldn't you know that last year? He was, again, on the team. Was he not? So he was on the team last year. And if he wasn't showing up to meetings last year, then why would you have gone into the season planning on him being a difference maker for your team? I still don't seem to understand this. If you ask the people over at 1025 and you said, what's Jared Stillman like? Don't you think even though we don't work together, they'd have a pretty good idea? Because we were together for the last 10 years. They saw me working on a daily basis. You saw Jarvis Brownlee working last year. And now he's a bad guy, and now he lacks discipline, and now he's unprofessional? I have a hard time with that one. So that's the scoop. The scoop is that Brownlee had a bad attitude, was late to meetings, showed no interest or desire in changing. And as is the case with the Titans, every time, once I hear something like that, now it leads me to all these other questions, which was, so was he a model citizen last year? Again, if you want to tell me that Jarvis Brownlee is a bad guy, fine. I don't know him from a jar of Vicks. Whatever. Fine. But if you want to tell me that they didn't know after they coached him all of last year and were counting on him this season and cut a starting corner who has played 128 snaps for the Ravens for him, then I think that's bullshit. Chad Brinker was here. Brian Callahan was here. Denard Wilson was here. So I'm sorry, but no excuse for this to all of a sudden be an issue with this player whom, again, you all were here last year for. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, because Jarvis Brownlee Jr. went to Louisville, I know some people that do know Jarvis Brownlee. I don't. Again, like I said, I don't know him from a jar of Vicks. He could walk into my living room and I wouldn't have any idea who he is. But I do know people that know him very well. I do know people that have coached him. I do know people that have worked in the administration with which he played. And I asked today, I made some phone calls and I said, hey, what's up with Jarvis Brownlee Jr.? Because what I'm hearing is that he lacked discipline, lacked respect, didn't show up to the meetings on time, didn't. And here's what I heard. Again, these are people not connected with the Titans that are connected with Louisville that knew Brownlee from college. They said, as long as he respects you, he's a good, affable, hardworking kid. And they emphasized the word kid. And they said that if he loses respect for you, he's going to be very, very difficult to coach. And I'm starting to wonder, with the penalties, with the discipline, with everything else, if that might have been the issue. That Denard Wilson or whomever was hard on Brownlee, trying to get him to change, trying to get him to stop committing the penalties, and for whatever reason, the coaching didn't not only not get through to him, but also turned him against the coaches. Again, what I was told by people at Louisville who would know him and have no skin in the game anymore. What do they care if Jarvis Brownlee goes on to never play in the NFL? I was told, hey, I like Jarvis. From the people that I talked to, they like Jarvis. They root for Jarvis. They think Jarvis is a great guy. They think that he's a hard worker, but that he can be a little quirky, that he can be a little out there, and that you've got to know the right buttons to push. And that Jeff Brom and his coaching staff at Louisville, they knew the right buttons to push. And I was talking with some people in the administration about the previous coaching staff. Scott Satterfield, who's now the head coach at Cincinnati. And I asked, would Scott Satterfield's coaching staff, not Jeff Brom's, but would Scott Satterfield's coaching staff, would they have known the right buttons to push? And I was told, and that takes me back to the crux of the issue. Callahan, Brinker, Denard Wilson. Again, part of the job when you've got players that are a little out there is figuring out how to coach them. I mean, we can sit here and say that Jarvis Brownlee wasn't good enough to have an attitude, and that is essentially something that I would agree with. But at the same time, not all these guys are perfect. You want A.J. Brown on your team? A.J. Brown can be moody, folks. Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, great players in this league, can be pains in the asses to coach. But that is what is coaching. It is figuring out the way to get through to these players and figuring out the way to get Jarvis Brownlee Jr. If he's not a bad guy who doesn't just hate the team, to show up to the meetings on time. It is to get Jarvis Brownlee Jr. to buy in to what you're coaching him and what you're telling him to get him to stop committing the penalties. But as is the case with the Titans, what I think can say definitively over 2 years is that Brian Callahan can't coach. And so instead of this coaching staff being able to take, again, a solid player, not a great player. This is not the same as if they were to just up and trade Cam Ward for a bag of peanuts, but a solid player, and they were to just say, well, we can't coach, whatever. That's your job, is to coach those guys. It is your job to figure out how to get through to them. If Jeff Brom can get through to them, you need to be able to get through to him, because that tells me that somebody that can coach can get through to him, unlike the guys here where it feels like they can't coach. So that's the scoop on Brownlee. Again, from what I understand, he was lacking discipline and respect and professionalism, and the Titans felt like he wasn't going to change. Now, the second part of the Brownlee deal that we have got to talk about, and that was Brian Callahan today. So I was fascinated to see how Brian Callahan was going to respond to this. And I was fascinated to see how the Titans organization was going to respond to the trade of Jarvis Brownlee Jr. Because this is very perplexing to the fans. And I think it's fair to say that the fans are significantly fed up with this organization. So you make a perplexing move when your team is as shitty as this team is, And you know the fans are going to go nuts, and they did yesterday. I mean, I was on the air in live time when it happened, and I couldn't believe it. I was shocked that they made that trade for what they got in return. If they had gotten a third-round pick for Jarvis Brownlee, I'd have said, okay, fine. But a sixth-round pick swap with a seventh going to the Jets? Oh, bullshit. So when you make a move like that, your fans are going to be very upset because on the surface, we're not there in the building every day. We don't see who says what. We don't know So you need to explain it. And I tweeted out this morning, I said, the team should have sent Chad Brinker or Mike Borgonzi to the podium to address the trade before Brian Callahan, who is dealing with enough shit at the moment. You should have sent up Borgonzi or Brinker to go up there and answer for a decision that was made with their authority. Brian Callahan doesn't have the authority to make a trade. Brian Callahan doesn't even have the authority anymore to call the plays. So what a smart organization, a well-run organization, an accountable organization would have done is they would have sent the general manager or the president of football operations up there to explain to the fans through the media why they made the trade they made. And then here comes Brian Callahan to talk about the Texan game. But who am I kidding? I knew that wasn't going to happen. I mean, come on. These are the Titans we're talking about here. So the common sense, this is what you should do. The Titans, of course, aren't going to do it. This is the same organization that fired their general manager in the middle of the week and then sent the head coach up there to answer about it. So Brian Callahan, who is already in a no-win situation, who has enough of his own problems, who is hanging on by a thread, has to get up there today and answer for the Brownlee trade. And I got to be honest, he did it in the single worst possible way. I don't want to speak for any of you, but I'm going to. He did it in the single worst possible way imaginable. Here was Brian Callahan today at the podium on the Jarvis Brownlee trade.
The Brownlee trade is on everybody's mind on top of it. Those are conversations that we have, and Mike and I have all those conversations. We're in lockstep with those decisions that get made, and those are things that are made for the short-term and the long-term interest of the football team, and that's ultimately what it was. There's short-term there. That's part of it, and there's a long-term part of it too. That those are the conversations we have. So, not more to elaborate on, but those are how those things get made, and that's what we think about when we make them.
What are the short-term and long-term benefits of the trade?
I'm not going to go into too many details of those conversations, but I think how I answered it is how I'm going to stay with it.
Okay, so he gets up there and is like, and I know everybody wants to talk about the Jarvis Brownlee trade, and, as an organization, we have to decide what's in the best interest of the short term and the long term of the team, and I'll go from there. Yes, TD, go ahead. What are the best interests long term, short term here? I think I'm going to go ahead and stick with what I just said. Oh, my God. Like, I'm trying to figure out who told Brian Callahan this was a good idea. I'm trying to figure out, again, if you're Brian Callahan, you got to defend yourself here. Like, I know they're fucking you by putting you in a situation where you have to go answer for something you didn't do and you have no authority over. But at least look like you are in control, and you have to level with the people some, because it's an incredibly perplexing move and nobody trusts you to begin with. Your credibility right now is zero. So don't go up there and make it worse. And when you give the generic bullshit like, oh yeah, this is what's best for the team, people are going to say, fuck you. And then Paul had to follow up on this horse shit by asking, again, Callahan's, our moves, they're not made about one player. They're all about the team. It's not about one blah, 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 blah. Here was PK and Callahan.
It wasn't anything about Jarvis in particular, but you decided to trade a semi-productive fifth-round pick in his second year for a step up from the seventh round to the sixth. So if it wasn't about Jarvis in particular, what was it about?
Again, It's about the short-term and long-term goals. I've already elaborated on it. You're not going to get any more details about the conversation. It is what it is.
Specifically, how is it not about the player?
It's always about all of it. All those things factor into the process, whether it's the player, whether it's the fit, whether it's what we think we can get for him, whether it's something that adds to the value of our draft capital. Those are all parts of the conversation, and those are decisions that we make as we talk about them.
Okay. So right there, he's like, this isn't about Jarvis in particular. How is it not? You traded Jarvis. Well, Callahan did himself no favors, and the organization did him and itself no favors. If a guy has a bad attitude, you have to say it. You have to admit to it. Jamarco Jones got in 2 fights, and Mike Vrabel cut him. And I asked Vrabel, I said, is that tough to make a decision like that when you recruited this guy out of high school and you brought him here to the Titans and Vrabel looked at me and he said, and we're going to crap on Vrabel here in a second, but for right now, this is where I think actually Vrabel did a good job. Vrabel was like, it's never hard to make a decision that's in the best interest of the team. As in, he's hurting the team. We got him out of here. Callahan couldn't do that. If a guy's got a bad attitude, say it. But when you can't win a game and you can't even get the field goal unit out there and you're acting as if you're so super secretive and, hey, you fans, you people, you don't need to know. Trust us. All it's going to do is make more people angry at the coach. And look, I know everybody's already angry at Callahan. I know people are already questioning Callahan's competence. But one thing football teams and football people love to do is they love to say things like, we don't care about the outside noise. We only care about what's happening in our building. I'm sorry, but if Jarvis Brownlee's not showing up to meetings and the team trades him, and the coach gets up there and looks like an imbecile in the press conference, everybody's going to see that, and everybody inside the building is going to think that the head coach is a moron just like they do outside of the building. So I'm sorry, but Callahan did himself 0 favors. The organization did him 0 favors. Again, I understand you don't need to have a press conference every time you add somebody to the practice squad. But when you make a major move like this that is questionable and is controversial, isn't that accountability to get up there and answer for it? But what's the one word I've used every time when talking about the Titans for the last 3 years? It's accountability. They haven't had any. They got crushed by the Lions last year, and Rand Carthon said the ball didn't bounce our way. The owner fires the general manager, and she takes 3 days to talk publicly about it. And I'm not letting the Titans off the hook here because they screwed Callahan by making Callahan go up there and answer questions about the Brownlee thing. But at some point, Callahan has to stand up for himself. At some point, Callahan has to get up there and he has to say something along the lines of, this is why we made the move. Or he has to say, this is why, you got to talk to Mike and Chad about that. Put that on them. But he can't do that. He doesn't have the balls to do it. He doesn't have the balls to be a good coach, much less have the balls to be able to get up there and say, yeah, I didn't do this. They did talk to them. Yeah, Jarvis Brownlee wasn't a culture fit here. We made the move. We tried the hardest we could. It wasn't working out. We went in a different direction. And not one person in this organization, with the exception of the owner, has the entitlement to feel like they own it. But he can't do that. He can't do it. And I do have to ask this, and I know this isn't such a big deal to the fans, and I understand that. And I remember during the offseason, and you guys know how the offseason works, where everybody's all, caught up in trying to find the good, and the team's spinning out the bullcrap narratives, and people are eating it up because that's what they want to believe, and so on and so forth. But this offseason, the Titans rid themselves of their longtime PR director, Robbie Bourne. And the fans did not care about the move. Every single person who covered this team, I think, sent a tweet or said something on their show, or at least showed their disappointment with the Titans' decision. I'll say it to you like this. I had TD on my show and Corey Curtis on my show that week, and they both talked about how displeased they were with the move the Titans made. Again, fans didn't care about it because they didn't see Robbie Bourne. They cared about Mike Keith leaving because they saw Mike Keith. But to me, as far as kind of the blood of the Titans, Robbie Bourne and Mike Keith were cut of the same cloth. And all of us who covered the team could not believe the stupidity of the move that the Titans made. Because we all worked with Robbie Bourne on a daily basis. We all knew he was a good PR guy. I saw people say, well, you're mad you're not getting any good stories and you're not. What good stories was I getting before? It wasn't about that. It's about seeing competence, seeing people good at their job, knowing they're good at their job, and then seeing an organization that has none of the right answers saying, he's the problem. When we all knew covering this team, he was not the problem. And the reason I bring this up is because we all knew how stupid that move was. Every single one of us that covers this team. And this is of no disrespect to the current PR director, Everett Geerlings, who has replaced Robbie. But he's never run a PR department before. Robbie had run the Titans PR department for almost 30 years. And I think I've pieced enough together to believe that the Robbie Bourne decision, which again, to people that know, was as perplexing as the Jarvis Brownlee Jr. trade was to the fans, say, wait a minute, you've got a perfectly good starting corner. Again, he's not the best starting corner, but he's definitely not the worst starting corner. You've got a perfectly good starting corner that is under contract, and you just got rid of him for no real reason? Like, what? That's the way we in the press felt about Robbie Bourne. You got this great PR director that's been there for 30 years who would take on a speeding car to protect the Tennessee Titans, and you just got rid of him? And I think I've pieced enough together to believe that the Robbie Bourne decision feels like a Brian Callahan move. That Callahan didn't understand last season why he was getting criticized as much as he was. Well, Brian, 3 games in with your handpicked PR guy who worked with you at the Raiders. And I'd say his PR situation is 10,000 times worse than it was last year. So, good coaching, bud. You know what's crazy? This entire season and the avalanche of shit that has just poured onto Brian Callahan is what? 100% of his doing. He didn't know the rules at Denver. He is the one that tried to push back and incorrectly stated the rule. He is the one who tried to take the blame for it. He is the one who then lied and went back and said that he misspoke. He is the one that got up there today and pretended like he was above explaining to the fans what happened. So, again, I'll just say this. How's that working out? And with this organization, man, I'll tell you, if Jarvis Brownlee was such a bad guy, why didn't you notice it last year? That's what I don't understand. So that's the Jarvis Brownlee stuff. And again, I talk to people at Louisville that know him and that like him. And they just said, look, man, he's a personality. And you've got to be able to coach that. And I guess this group decided that they couldn't coach it, that they were done trying and they weren't interested in trying to coach it. Now, Paul had a tweet that I do want to address because, boy, this is a tough spot to be in. So PK put this out there yesterday, and he said the top needs for the 2026 Titans are as such: a number one edge rusher, a number one wide receiver, a number one corner, because he's assuming they're going to cut L'Jarius Sneed, a number one running back, and now a number two corner. As PK says, another unmanageable list. This is the question I would have for the Titans. Again, going back to the idea that they just couldn't coach Jarvis Brownlee Jr. Is it really worth just giving up right now and saying, nope, nothing we can do about it, move on, to now give yourself more of what you have to build for next season? Because at some point, and I know patience and draft, develop and retain, and look at Alec Iomanor, Jared, he's so good. I know. But at some point, don't you need to start getting players on the team? Don't you need like an Iomanor to be a starting player? Don't you need guys to start? Okay, good. We don't have to go into the offseason and worry about that. Because what this group's not going to get next year is they're not going to get, well, we couldn't fix everything in one offseason. And this was the trade-off that they got when drafting Cam Ward, which was you can trade the pick and get a boatload of picks in return, and that's how you can start to rebuild your roster, or you can take the quarterback. They picked quarterback. We don't know if Cam Ward is going to be good or not. Anybody out there saying he's going to be Mahomes, Jared, you're just wanting to believe that. But, I mean, they keep creating this mess for themselves because they keep believing at the time, like, no, we're good at corner. We got Jarvis Brownlee. And then 3 games into it, it's like, yeah, nah, we're good. Nah, pass. So, I mean, I don't know how you rebuild this team when you have no good young players and you're hoping, like, again, think about the guys that when this team's going to be good are going to be a part of this core. The same way that Byard and Lewan and Conklin and Henry and Tannehill and Brown and Davis and Jonnu Smith and the list goes on. David Long, Jayon Brown. Think about the core of this team when they get good. Cam Ward, we don't know if he's going to be good. J.C. Latham, we don't know if he's going to be good. Peter Skoronski, he's a guard. Dan Moore, we don't know if he's good. That is not a place you want to be. And again, it's not as if they have a bunch of extra picks that next year, hey, we're going to build this team around. They don't have any. Even yesterday, you would think, hey, if you're going to trade out Jarvis Brownlee, you're at least going to acquire a meaningful piece in return. And swapping from the 7th to the 6th really isn't that. So it's just a train wreck all around. I do want to hit on the play calling topic from yesterday that Bo Hardegree is going to be taking over the play calling. And there was one thing that a lot of people have asked a question about, and I understand this question, which is why Bo Hardegree, the quarterback's coach, to call the plays, but not Nick Holz, the offensive coordinator, to call the plays. And let me just say this. I talked to somebody who I think would know, who told me in regards to Nick Holz, quote, nobody in the building would want Nick Holz to call the plays. Which leads me to this. What kind of coaching staff did Brian Callahan put together where nobody wants Nick Holz, the offensive coordinator, to call the plays? And why is he offensive coordinator then? And the answer is simple. Because he and Brian Callahan are buddies. And that's how they put the coaching staff together. Well, I worked with him. We're buddies. Let's bring him on. Can he call plays? No. Who cares? It'll be fine. Does anybody else see how horrendous this entire operation has become post John Robinson? I know John Robinson didn't draft great players at the end there. I get it. But it wasn't as operationally pathetic as it has become around here now. The Titans hired a head coach who made his buddy who can't call plays the offensive coordinator. Then the head coach didn't change the offensive coordinator after a disastrous season in which they finished 26th in total offense and 31st in turnovers. And this coaching staff, do you remember they skipped the Senior Bowl in order to build out this incredible coaching staff? Well, we have to skip the Senior Bowl because we got to build out this coaching staff under Callahan, which I called bullshit at the time, and I think I was right about that. And not only that, but you want to know what the coaching staff wasn't able to do because they didn't go to the Senior Bowl? They weren't able to meet Jarvis Brownlee Jr. in person because that's where the Titans found him, was at the Senior Bowl. So they could have learned that he was unprofessional or lacked discipline when they sat down and met with him at the Senior Bowl, but they couldn't because they didn't even go because they were too busy putting this great coaching staff together with an offensive coordinator who can't call the plays. What a train wreck. Translation: incompetence. That's how you get as bad in this league as the Tennessee Titans are. Incompetence. But that's what happens when you put a college lacrosse player in charge of conveying football discussions to the owner simply because he's dating and now married to the owner's daughter. I have a brother-in-law too. His name is Chris. He works in IT. I like Chris. But you want to know what I don't do? I don't let Chris run my business. Why? Because, again, he works in IT. I don't think he's qualified to run my business. In fact, I've hired one person since I transitioned from the radio station to this. I have hired exactly one person. Her name is Sarah Giles. She runs my social media. She used to be the social media, and I don't know what her title was with the Predators, but director or whatever. She ran the Preds social media accounts. And she got out of the game because she didn't want to do all the traveling and the 80 games and everything else. And so she got out. And I knew Sarah Giles. I liked Sarah Giles. We had a cordial professional relationship. Hey, how you doing? Good. How are you? And even before I left the radio station, I had thought about trying to hire her to help out with social media and graphics and everything else. That video that we made to tease the show, that was all her. I mean, I did the audio on that, but she did all the stuff that everybody was like, wow, that was her. Again, not my bestie pop. I know her. I like her. But I added her to the team. She was the one I circled because she has these skills to help me. Not my best buddy. And that's what incompetent organizations do. They go hire their buddies, no matter how qualified or unqualified they are. And Callahan was lucky because we live in a world where a lot of these coaches don't get second seasons anymore if it is such a disaster within the first season. Gerard Mayo didn't get a second season in New England. For whatever the guy's name escapes me, who was with the Raiders, Antonio Pierce, he didn't get a second shot with the Raiders. The year before, Frank Reich got hired to coach Bryce Young. And Frank Reich didn't even make it through the season. So it's not crazy to fire a head coach after 1 year, especially when you go on a shopping spree the way this team went on a shopping spree during that season, that off season, to go 3-14 and to bring in a new general manager. Usually the coach doesn't keep his job. So Brian Callahan got lucky that he was able to keep his job after that first season. And a lot of coaches, when things are not going well, but they survive a season, almost always have to change the coordinators. A lot of times these guys don't want to change coordinators. Just like how I don't think Callahan wants to give up the plays. But it is sometimes put on them. Either you do it or you don't. And in this case, nobody, I guess, told Brian Callahan that. So his unqualified offensive coordinator stayed in that position. And the Titans can sell this however they want about the duties and everything else, and the Bo Hardegree's called the plays before, and I'm going to tell you what this looks like to me. This looks like to me that the Titans told Brian Callahan, either Bo Hardegree calls the plays or you're fired and Bo Hardegree will call the plays. But one way or another, Bo Hardegree's going to call the plays. And that would make sense, right? He's done it before on an interim basis. And when Bo Hardegree said yesterday, like, yeah, I won't be able to sit down with Cam the whole time, I'm going to have to go talk to position, that tells me he's got a plan for how he's going to call the plays. My guess is the reason it was Hardegree over McCoy is because they are preparing for McCoy to become the interim head coach. But this idea that Nick Holz, nobody in the building wants him calling the, holy shit, how do you hire guys like this? Hey, I want this guy to be my offensive coordinator. So if you get hit by a bus going to the game, can he call the plays? Nope. I tell you, that's probably not a great place to be in. So I do want to get to some of your reaction because a lot of you do want to weigh in here on the YouTube chat, and I've been storing things as I go along. But I think I want to get to this because this is going to put me in a good mood. Has anybody been keeping up with what's been going on with the great Mike Vrabel in Foxborough? I have. So as you all know, I love to listen to Boston radio. And if you remember, I went on Boston radio at the Super Bowl. And I sat down with them and I'm like, look, Vrabel is a good coach. But you guys are talking about him like he is all that in a bag of chips, and he is not that good of a coach. The national media talks about Mike Vrabel as if there was no Tennessee Titans organization before Mike Vrabel showed up. They talk about Mike Vrabel as if this team hadn't gone 9-7 back-to-back years and gone to the divisional round of the playoffs the day before Mike Vrabel showed up. So everybody thought that the great Mike Vrabel, who was screwed over in Tennessee, is going to go into New England and he's going to return them to the days of Brady and Belichick. And through 3 games, the Patriots are 1-2. And by almost every metric, and this is something that they've been pointing out a lot in Boston, by every metric possible, they are worse in New England than they were through 3 games a year ago under Gerard Mayo. As of right now, the great Mike Vrabel's Patriots are 29th in turnovers given up, 32nd in fumbles lost, 28th in passing defense, and they've played Geno Smith, Tua, and old man Aaron Rodgers. They've won 1 game that they eked out against the shitty Dolphins. Everybody in New England is starting to wonder, wait a minute, what about this great Mike Vrabel? This is what they said yesterday when talking about, again, the great Mike Vrabel, what they were sold and what they're seeing. Here's what they said on 98.5, the Sports Hub in Boston yesterday in regards to, again, the great Mike Vrabel.
Well, again, I'm not telling you this is a great roster. I'm just telling you it's better than what Gerard Mayo was working with. I think Mike Vrabel is working with more. He has a better staff, allegedly. And the record's the same as it was through 3 games, and the play has been worse. Penalties are way up. Turnovers are way up. Tackling's way down. They're worse in penalties, worse in turnovers, and a worse tackling team. The very fundamental things that we thought Vrabel would clean up, if nothing else. You thought that, well, he'd get those things in order. They'd be a tough, disciplined team that tackled and didn't take penalties and didn't turn the ball over. And maybe they lost on talent because a better team beat them. But they wouldn't be that kind of team. They wouldn't beat themselves. Instead, they've been that exact beat themselves kind of team. Completely underwhelming start for Mike Vrabel. There's only two conclusions here, and there's actually a third. But the two primary are he's underachieving. Mm-hmm. Mike Vrabel and his staff are not coaching to the level they're capable of. Mm-hmm. Or he's not that good, and we had it wrong. Mm-hmm. He's either underachieving or he's not the coach we think he is. Pick one.
Right now, to me, it's B.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. So they're sitting there saying, like, hey, either this team is, Vrabel's coaching them up to the best he can and they're not that good, or Vrabel is not that good. Which one? And they're like, I think it's number 2. Amazing. Here's my take on Vrabel, and this has always been my take on Vrabel, and it's always going to be my take on Vrabel. Vrabel is a good coach. He is. Brian Callahan is a very bad coach. Vrabel's a much better coach. Make no mistake about that. But what happened in the football media TV world was apparently there was this idea that Mike Vrabel created the Titans, and that all of the success that the Titans have ever had as an organization were because they were lucky enough to hire Mike Vrabel as their coach. They always overrated what Mike Vrabel did when he was the coach of the Tennessee Titans. Everybody assumed that the Titans were tough because of Mike Vrabel, but they were tough for 2 years before Mike Vrabel even showed up under Mike Mularkey. The core of this team that was successful when Vrabel was the coach, Byard, Henry, Lewan, Conklin, Ben Jones, Jarrell Casey, a lot of that was acquired before Vrabel even showed up. He had nothing to do with those picks. Now, Ryan Tannehill was acquired when Vrabel was here, and A.J. Brown was acquired when Vrabel was here. But it's not as if Mike Vrabel invented all the success the Titans had. But because Vrabel used Bill Belichick's clock loophole trick against him in a playoff game, everybody just seemed to assume that all of the success was because of Vrabel. And that's the problem. When you get too caught up by being spun in these fake football narratives. The narrative was Vrabel good, Mularkey bad. Their first 2 years as head coach of the Titans, 9-7, 9-7. One guy got to the divisional round of the playoffs. The other guy got to the AFC Championship game. That's one game difference. But again, Mularkey bad, Vrabel good. If you were to ask me exactly what kind of coach the Tennessee Titans need right now to help fix this thing, it's not another Mike Vrabel. To me, it's another Mike Mularkey. But you all hated Mike Mularkey, so I guess that is probably some hill that I'll have to die on by myself. All right, let's get to some of your comments here on the program. If you guys want to weigh in, I've been starring some of these as we've been going along the way. Adam in Portland says, still waiting for someone to tell me the one thing Callahan has done well and why we shouldn't be worried that he's going to continue to make bad decisions. Adam, can I ask you a question? Is there anybody out there that's trying to defend Brian Callahan? Like, I don't even think the Titans are really trying to defend Brian Callahan. I think the Titans are pretty much leaving Callahan out there to cook. I think they're pretty much, they're not going to go out there and say Callahan sucks, but I think they know that Brian Callahan is not a very good coach. So when you're like, I need somebody to defend Callahan for me, that was me in June when you people were out there trying to believe in the Pee Wee program. But now we all watch the games on Sunday. We all know the guy can't coach. One person says Brownlee wasn't a game changer or anything, but for the love of God, only getting a 6th and having to give up a 7th. What a joke. This organization never fails to prove its incompetence. Again, I understand sometimes when a guy just has to go. When it's like, man, it is bad, and it's bad for the culture, and it's bad for the locker room, and it's bad for the guy, and it's bad for everybody. I get it. but he's a starting corner with 2 extra years of rookie contract control beyond this year. And you just give that away? Like, really? That's it? A 6th and a 7th back? Again, you're calling teams to ask a starting corner. Again, not a good starting corner, but a starting corner in the National Football League. And you're saying, yeah, I'll get a little bit more, I'll 6th, 7th. Like, what the fuck is that kind of return? I mean, I'd rather just keep him on the bench with a ankle injury until somebody else has a corner that actually has an ankle injury and then trade him for like a 5th in 2027 if that's the best you can get. I also did see a report. I forget who reported it. I think it might have been Albert Breer. I don't know. Somebody reported yesterday that apparently Vrabel was in, that the Patriots had interest in Jarvis Brownlee. And somebody said, if that had happened, this fan base would have gone nuts. Let me say this. When it comes to, let me say this. Let me say this when it comes to the idea of this fan base going nuts and they traded him to Vrabel. That should be the least of your concerns right now. Vrabel is stinking it up on his own. James says, why can't Chad Brinker come out and explain the move? He was there for the draft of Brownlee and now the trade, instead of making Callahan take the brunt of the questions. Here's what I still don't understand. And I got on Joe Rexroad about this today. What does Mike Borgonzi do and what does Chad Brinker do? Today, Brian Callahan said, me and Mike stay in contact talking about these things all the time. But what about Chad? And is Chad at fault for any of this? Whose decision was it to draft Cam Ward? Was it Mike's decision? Was it Chad's decision? I don't know. But the answer as to why Chad Brinker or Mike Borgonzi didn't come out today and didn't address the Jarvis Brownlee trade before sticking Callahan out there and setting Callahan up to make himself, for the umpteenth time in 3 weeks, look like a total incompetent boob is beyond me. Because to me, that's setting your guy up to get fucked. Even if you don't like him, you're setting him up to look horrible. And then Callahan did his part by answering it in the most incompetent way possibly, to act as if there was some sort of mega secret and, just trust us on this. I'll leave it at that. You guys don't deserve any explanation of the... Dude, we don't even trust you as to whether or not you can get the kicking ball out there, much less why you're trading away starting players for peanuts. Craig says, I hated the penalties Brownlee committed. Just hope whoever takes his place doesn't give up bomb after bomb. Again, I think Brownlee's fine. I don't think, I'll put it to you like this when it comes to Brownlee. The penalties Brownlee committed, I used to hate them too. What I really hated was I hated how Brownlee would commit those penalties. They were obvious penalties. And then Titan Twitter would be like, that's bullshit. Why they call that? I'm like, he's got his hands all over Justin Jefferson. They're going to call that. He's a 5th round rookie corner going up against Justin Jefferson. He's not going to get the benefit of the doubt. But I did like his competitiveness. Those were real penalties, though. Like, I know Brownlee said after the Denver game, like, yeah, I'm going to keep playing my game. I don't, like, dude, those were real penalties. But, again, I'm with you. Who are you going to put out there? Well, Jalen Armour Davis, whom we claimed off of waivers from the Ravens, he's going to go out there and play. Okay. Good luck. Brandon says, who's to say that the issues, and I think these are in reference to Jarvis Brownlee's issues. Again, what I was told, undisciplined, unprofessional, showing up late to meetings. The coaching staff, the organization did not feel like he was going to change. Somebody says, who's to say these issues came to light last year? Let me tell you something about people in life. 99.9% of the time, somebody tells you who they are and they tell it to you pretty quickly. It's one thing in a job interview to maybe fudge something here or give somebody an impression that you are what you're not. It's hard to be around people for an entire year and for them to not have a pretty good idea as to what you are or what you are not. Even then, job interviews kind of give it away. Bill Polian said that when he went to the Combine in 1998, Peyton Manning came up to him and said, hey, if you take me number 1 overall, I'm going to be in the building the next day. And Polian said to Peyton, well, that's not really how it works, but you know, there's certain rules in there. And Peyton said, I don't care what you got to do, but I'll be there the next day. So then they sat down with Ryan Leaf and they asked Ryan Leaf, they were like, hey, if we draft you number 1 overall, what are you going to do the next day? Knowing that Peyton had already said, hey, they draft me number 1, I'm going right in there. And Bill Polian said that Ryan Leaf was like, well, I'm going with my friends to Vegas and we're going to go out, we're going to party, and then I'm going to. So it's hard for me to believe that if Jarvis Brownlee was this unprofessional, that he was able to hide it for 2 years. What it sounds to me like is the Titans coaching staff thought they could coach it and they got fed up with it because they weren't winning, and now they just want to try to blame the player. One person says, would have the media have reported that in some way? How is this first we're hearing about this? I saw somebody with A to Z, one of their draft writers, reported that Jarvis Brownlee was terrible at Florida State and he was awful in the draft process and teams took him off the board. And I didn't hear any of that. I talked to the people at Louisville. They told me, hey, Jarvis is an odd cat, but he's a good dude. He plays hard. I mean, I remember when they drafted him, I texted my buddy who's the athletic director and I said, what's the scoop on this? And he said, Jarvis Brownlee's great. He's very physical and he can hit. And he's like, you have to keep him healthy. But other than that, he's great. And I remember asking him last year about Jarvis and he was like, oh, I love him. He's like, I love him. But, you know, that's the way it goes. So I did ask yesterday, what happened to the distinguished gentleman who was the MVP of the previous show, the Stillman and Company on the radio, the censored, I guess, Stillman and Company? I said, what happened to the distinguished gentleman? Jude says TDG said that he wouldn't come here for hype, gossip, sports talk, and would only with real football talk on 102.5. Buddy, how has the show changed? Is it not the same show, just with me saying the word fuck every now and then? To me, that's really the only difference. That I don't have to repeat the same thing over and over again to fill the 4 hours. This is like, hey, you're going to get pretty much what the show would have been, and then we'll copy and paste it for the next 3 hours. So I'm a little disappointed. I feel a little disappointed that TDG, who is my guy, said he was going to come to Twin Peaks for the draft last year and we were going to do fireball shots and then he didn't come. I am a little disappointed. He was the one guy who I figured, hey, he was going to be here and he has not. Okay. I want to hit the final topic today. And this topic, and boy, where is TDG when you need him? This topic is for you people. And I think this topic, when you talk about real football talk, that is exactly what this is. So I don't even totally understand this chart. Adjusted EPA per play leaderboard. So apparently this is adjusted for pass protection, receiver drops, dropped interceptions, fumble recoveries, and interception returns, giving credit for expected yards after the catch only and accounting for defenses faced. So this is some sort of analytic PFF, EPA, some sort of guru stat chart. You know, the kind of stuff that Adam Vingan would like wipe off his glasses and triple check because he'd be like, oh my God, look at these analytic stats. And according to this, the number 1 quarterback in the National Football League through 3 weeks is, that's right, you're looking at it right here. Make sure I get my hand here. You're looking at it right here. Sam freaking Darnold with an EPA of 99 and a PFF of 100. Sam Darnold is ranked at 99, one spot ahead of Dak Prescott at 98, and Daniel Jones is third at 89. So this statguru.com, whatever it is, I guess this is from Kevin Cole. Kevin Cole and FTN and NFL, whatever, this leaderboard. I saw this from a retweet of Kaharski. They say Sam Darnold is the number one guy right now in the league. I try to tell you guys, Sam Darnold is good. He's not great. He's not a franchise, elite quarterback, but he's good. And I said, you sign Sam Darnold and he runs the team. So now you can trade the first pick and you can build your shitty roster up. And then when it's time to pounce on a quarterback, you can do it. And everybody said, no, he sucks. No, he sucks. He sucks. He stinks. Kevin O'Connell's the only reason he's any good. Yeah, how's JJ doing up there in Minnesota? They can't even get Justin Jefferson the ball. He's on my girlfriend's fantasy team. They can't even pass it to him. AI on the Yahoo fantasy thing is saying, go play Emeka Ibuka over Justin Jefferson because JJ McCarthy and company can't get him the ball. So I try to tell you guys, I tried to tell you, Sam Darnold, and you guys didn't want to listen. And this goes back to what I've said about reputation in the NFL. Sam Darnold said on a Monday Night Football broadcast, which should have never, ever, ever been broadcast to the country. Sam Darnold said he was seeing ghosts his second year in the league. And from that point on, nobody took him seriously, and everybody thought that he was a bum. Even though he was 4-2 in Carolina, even though they were 14-2 last year in Minnesota. They didn't have a good playoff game. Coach Les Steckel called into the radio show and was like, that offensive protection for Darnold was such bullshit. In that game, what are you talking about? It wasn't Darnold. The line, it was awful. He had no time to throw. And yet, here's Sam Darnold. Again, it's 3 weeks. But they say he's number one in the adjusted EPA per play leaderboard. Whatever the fuck that means. Sam Darnold, we salute you. And your passer rating of 104.7. We salute you. Stillman and Company. That's it for us. Tomorrow, 2:00. We'll see you live on YouTube. And of course, wherever you get your podcast, like and subscribe. Stillman and Company, 440 Sports. We'll see you tomorrow.